What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode number 27, all about how to stick to your goals and routines. Now, let's be honest. Many coaches and course creators, they have big dreams to make an impact and influence humanity to be a better place, right? I mean, we can be honest about that. Yet some really go on to create massive impact and create this fat bank accounts in the process while fully embodying their life of freedom, while others don't seem to really gain the momentum to create that as a reality. Now, why is this? Well, the answer may surprise you, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the John Amyx podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is John Amyx. My friends call me AJ, and my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show.
All right, well, welcome back. Today's going to be a very, very fun Sunday sermon edition of the show. I'm going to be talking about the key to sticking to your goals and your routines, and it comes down to a very simple single word, which is commitment. And I found it's a lot easier to actually say that word than actually walk that out. So I thought that we should dive down the rabbit hole on this idea of commitment because it's something I've personally struggled with in regards to marketing inside this game as a coach and a course creator. And through my own struggles with it, I really believe I found some really amazingly good gold coins that I can bring back from the trenches and share with you. And I think it's really going to serve you. Now, before we enter down into that rabbit hole, if you haven't already, I want you to go get my book called Mindset is Not Enough. And the reason I'm telling you to go do that is because it's ridiculously hard to stick to your goals and routines if your body set isn't fully integrated with your goals and your desires. Now, I don't have enough time to dive into that today, and this is why I'm telling you, go get the book called Mindset is Not Enough. And you can go get that book for free by going to AJAmyx, that's AMYX.com/book. Now, not enough people in this coaching and course creator industry are talking about this concept. Now, it seems like all of the leaders are telling everybody that the game is just about their mindset and their strategic action. Now, if this was the case, I mean, you'd probably have the money, the peace, and the freedom that your heart desires by now. So make sure you go to AJAmyx.com/book and get that book for free because it will really help you understand how to really move powerfully towards your goals. Now, let's dive down the rabbit hole because this would not be a Sunday sermon if we didn't, right? So let's do this thing. Now, if you're open, I'll have you consider that commitment is the thing that separates the haves from the have-nots. In fact, it's vital if you want to experience the levels of freedom and purpose and success that you feel called to experience in this lifetime. And without commitment, I'm here to tell you that you're going to fall short of your dreams and your desires pretty much almost every single time, always. So my intention with today's Sunday sermon is to help you better understand what commitment truly is and how to really integrate it powerfully into your own life. See, there's a really big difference between being involved in something and being committed to something. See, being involved in something is defined as the fact or condition of participating in something, and commitment is defined as the state or the quality of being dedicated to a cause or an activity, etc., right? See, most people are involved with their success, but they are not committed. There's this old business fable, and you've probably heard it, about a pig and a chicken walking down the road. And as they're walking with one another, the chicken says, "Hey, pig, I was thinking we should open a restaurant." And the pig replies, "Well, maybe. I mean, what would we call it?" And the chicken responds, "Well, how about ham and eggs?" And the pig thinks for a moment and says, "No, thanks. I'd be committed, but you'd only be involved." Now, this is a good illustration of this concept of what we're dialoguing about here. See, if we're committed to our next level of freedom and purpose and success in our lives, then we're dedicated to doing what's required to make it a reality at a core level. And I'm talking about being committed to the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions required to make our dreams a reality. Now, most people aren't doing this, and it's why they haven't broken through to that next level of success in their lives. And in the book of Matthew in the Bible, in chapter 7, verse 20, Jesus says, "By their fruits ye shall know them." Meaning by their results, you will know if they walk the walk and talk the talk. And it doesn't matter what they say, it matters what they do. Both what they think, both what they feel, and the things that they're doing. And last week during episode number 25 on the last Sunday sermon edition of the show, I talked about how most people are more committed to their reasons rather than their results. And if you haven't listened to episode number 25, I highly recommend you dive into that episode because it really makes this episode so much more powerful. And it's interesting because I haven't really strategically set up these episodes to lead into one another, but it kind of seems like they are, so it's kind of cool. And at my quarterly uprising events, I define commitment as the process of recommitment. Now, I first learned this concept from my good friend Jonathan Heston, and you may remember him from episode number 6, but commitment looks like different things for different people. Like for the boxer, this means getting back up off the mat after being knocked down. Now, maybe you watched the first fight with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder back in December of 2018 and watched as Tyson Fury like pretty much rose from the dead during the 12th round after getting knocked down. It was fucking insane. It's an amazing fight. And their last fight, I think it was like last week, February 22nd, 2 weeks ago, was an amazing fight as well for a heavyweight fight. Amazing. Now, for the marathon runner, it's running another 10 miles after your strength is gone, right? Now, I follow Jesse Itzler on Instagram, and last month, which was the month of February, and it happened to be leap year, by the way, and what he did is he did this thing called Calendar Club, which consisted of running the number of miles that corresponded to the day of the month. Now, this meant that every single day he ran the number of miles that corresponded to the day of the month. So for February 1st, this meant 1 mile. For February 2nd, this meant he had to run 2 miles. When he got to like February 20th, which is my birthday, by the way, that meant he had to run 20 miles that day. So in total, by the end of the month, he ran 435 miles for the month of February. Now, let me put this in perspective for you, just so you're like, 435 miles. Like, that's a lot of miles. But let me put it in perspective. That's like running from Miami to Cuba and then back, and then doing the whole thing again, where you run to Cuba from Miami back to Miami. And then after doing that, you run a full marathon. And then after that, you run another half marathon on top of all of the running. And by the way, the dude is 51 years old. So it was really cool to be along for that journey via his Instagram stories. I mean, it's just like super inspiring to see someone so like legitimately fucking committed to a goal that he set for himself for the sake of personal expansion. Like he wasn't making any money from doing it. It was just something that he did for his own sake of personal expansion, which was even more amazing. And I watched as the guy was running in the morning or during the day or at 1 or 2 in the morning, like he just got the miles in. I mean, he still did his business meetings. He still went to his kids' functions. He played ball with them during the day. I mean, like he lived his life and he honored his responsibilities and he did what was required. Like he was committed every single day. Super incredible. Now for the soldier, it's a little bit different. Like for them, it's about making their way through the mission without knowing what they're going to encounter along the way because they're committed to a cause. To the missionary or the person who joins the Peace Corps, it's about saying goodbye to like their own comfort to make life better for others. And for the coach and course creator, it's about all of these things and a lot more because in today's day and age, your target market is watching your life and they're depending upon you to get back up again, to run those miles when you think you can't anymore, to display the courage when faced with the unknown, and to fucking die to self for the betterment of humanity if you're truly called to be a coach and a course creator. And just like the pig, there's no such thing as partial commitment. You're either all in or you're not. Like, that's it. There is no halfway. And by the way, a big part of sticking to your goals and your routines is understanding this concept of true fucking commitment. See, there's lots of people who listen to podcasts or watch videos on YouTube. They buy the courses, they go to the events, they get inspired to increase their income and impact, yet they don't understand in order to be truly successful long-term, like to bring their dreams to reality, that they're going to have to be committed. So it would really help them to ask the question, like before they begin, like, yo, am I really willing to commit to this? Not just be involved, like fully fucking commit to this thing before they started down the path of some certain strategy or some tactic or some tool. And this doesn't just in the game of business. I'm talking about in our health or family or connection to source, like having fun, like across the board. And I'd be willing to bet if most people would just pause for a second to ask and answer the question that I just posed to you, like, hey, am I willing to fully commit to this? Like if they had asked that question to themselves before they chose to move forward with something, they would probably find themselves saying no to more things than yes. And as a result, when they do say yes, then they would stick to their goals and their routines. And the byproduct, by the way, would be just like fucking amazing big ass results and some really good momentum. So what is this true nature of commitment? Well, It's pretty simple, really, and it consists of two things. The first thing you must understand about commitment is it's a simple decision that always precedes the achievement, right? True commitment is a decision that always precedes the achievement. You see, some want everything to be perfect before they're willing to commit themselves to anything, yet getting things done doesn't always mean the process is pretty. I mean, a perfect example of this was Jesse Itzler and his Calendar Club month. I mean, towards the end of the month of February, man, like his runs were ugly. And he said this, not me. I mean, he wasn't worried about the posture of his runs or the shoes he wore or how he got it done. Like it wasn't a continuous run. Instead, he was just focused on just being where his feet were and getting the run done. Like when it came to February 29th, and he chose to run 29 miles that day, even though he'd already run 406 miles that month. I'm pretty sure there was a thought that probably crossed his mind because he's human. He's probably had this thought that said, well, I've already run like 406 miles this month. I mean, that's probably a lot more than most people. Let's just, let's call it good. Like that probably crept through his mind. But see, he had decided at the beginning of the month that he was going to run the number of miles that corresponded to the day for the entire month of February, even though it was leap year. So he didn't. Like he didn't worry how. Instead, he just simply decided and committed to making it happen. Rain, snow, body hurting, it didn't matter. And by the way, he did all of those things. He ran in the snow, ran in the rain, like he ran even though his feet were hurting, his ankles were a little swollen. Like before he even started the race, in his mind, in his soul, it was done. And so it was. And from that place, he would just focus on putting his running shoes on. And from that place, he chose how he wanted to break up his miles for the day and just got in the miles. And when it was getting later into the month, he was breaking the runs up into chunks and just focused on the next step until it was complete. Now, when I went skydiving with Sarah, my wife, several years ago, like when we left the house that day and we were driving to Fort Worth, Texas to go skydiving, when we left, I made the decision in my mind and in my soul that I was totally 100% okay if I died that day. This way, when I arrived to the place, like we were filling out all the forms that pretty much said, hey, you're okay if you die and it's not our fault, right? Like it wasn't a problem for me. I had a lot of fun that day. It was totally cool, no problems, because I had committed. I had made the decision before the achievement of jumping out the plane. Now, compare that experience with that of my wife. She was fucking terrified. Like she wanted to quit while we're filling out the forms. She was like calling her mother. She's like, hey, the dog's here, our stuff's here, the keys are here. And her mom was like, Sarah, you're going to be okay. Like you're not going off to war, right? But the thing is like, I was like, yo, we've committed. We're going to get through this. So I wouldn't let her back out because it was her idea to jump out of the plane in the first place. And it was going to happen with or without her. So she decided to go through with the whole, jumping out of the plane thing. But she was filled with all of this fear throughout the process. And me, on the other hand, since I had committed to jumping out of the plane and being cool with dying, like, so it was. And since I made that decision and committed, then I could just be present and enjoy the process, whatever that entailed, because I had no clue. I was just like, we're jumping out of a plane today. Now, another story I can share with you just to illustrate how commitment is a decision that precedes the achievement was when I was hiking out of Havasupai in Arizona. Now, the year was 2015. I was with Christopher John Stubbs. You may remember him from episode number 4. And we had spent this whole week together in the bottom of the Grand Canyon at Havasupai with like, I think 30 other people. And it was for his event called the Badass Breakthrough. And to get back to our cars on the last day, we had to hike 12 miles with like our 35, 40-pound backpacks, whatever they were. And there was this elevation change of about 2,000 feet along that hike. And that most of that elevation change was during that last mile and a half. Not all of it, but a big, vast majority of it. And so that last mile and a half, man, it was intense. I mean, it was like this steep hike out of the canyon. And for the last mile and a half, my legs were hurt, my calves were on fire, my legs were cramping. I was still in pretty good shape too. My feet felt like bricks. It was hot. It was hard. And I just had to like focus on my breathing and just keep putting one foot in front of the other until I made it out. And so how did I do that? Well, I decided that morning when we left at 3 a.m. from the bottom of Havasupai Falls, like at 3 a.m. when we started to hike out, I decided in my mind, in my soul, I was going to keep up with Christopher at whatever pace he was walking at. And by the way, he was training for an Ironman, like the entire pre-time we're there and the entire time we're there. So he was like in crazy good cardio shape. And so I was like, look, I'm going to keep up with this guy and I'm just going to keep walking at whatever pace he sets, period. And so we did it. And it took 3 hours and 45 minutes for me to make it out. It took Christopher like 3 hours and 3.5 hours. So he beat me in like 15 minutes or whatever. And so it took me 3 hours and 45 minutes to make that 12-mile hike out of the canyon. But I want you to see that it started with a decision and a knowing before I ever began that it was done. Right? Is this making sense? Now, the second thing you must understand about the true nature of commitment is it's always tested by action. Like, it's one thing to talk about commitment, and it's another to do something about it. And this doing is what separates the haves from the have-nots. So you either choose to do what's required or you don't. Like, it's that simple. Everything outside of that is just bullshit. Now, I'm going to get real with you for a second. I used to have a real problem with this. I really did. Like, I would hear people say things like, just do the fucking work, or winners do what's required, period. Now, my problem with this was I didn't understand. Like, I just thought winners forced themselves to do the things that were required, and I didn't really understand how that was truly sustainable. Like, I didn't understand how winners wouldn't burn out because that's what I did over and over and over again in my life. Like, for me, like, I'm just the guy that goes to extremes. Like, when I used to play soccer, I played at a very high competitive level for many, many, many years, nonstop. Like, I'd play indoor on a club team in the winter and the summer, and then on the outdoor, I'd play on a club team in the fall and spring. And I did that for, that competitively, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th, like 5, 6, 7 years. Like, it was just nonstop. Like, I never really had an off season at all. And I played so much and at such a high level that I actually tore my calf muscle from my bone. And so every time like I ran, it hurt. If you just like the air, almost like if you just barely just touched my calf, it felt like you put a knife in it and were twisting it. And it was crazy, right? Now, I didn't really know how to cope with it back then. So I would just eat a handful of ibuprofen each day before practice, and I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because back then I was committed to being one of the best players, but it came at a cost, right? And then when that chapter of my life came to a close, I did the same thing with music. And when that chapter of my life came to a close, I did the same thing building a social media marketing business. And it was like the extreme act of doing was the only way I knew to accomplish things. Like, that's the only thing I knew. Just so by the time I was about 28 years old, I was like, man, I'm done forcing myself to do what's required, like, because it comes with such painful consequences of burnout. And I'm just like starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And I've accomplished a lot of things, but I can't keep up this pace. Now, maybe you can relate with this. So when I heard these things like just do the fucking work, or winners do what's required, period, or fuck your excuses, or whatever people say, there was a big part of me that was like, fuck off. Like, that's not sustainable. Like, people are going to burn out, Like, I knew like there had to be this self-care in the mix of that. So this sent me on this journey to discover this balancing act between self-care and then doing what's required. And I found it all comes back to this word, commitment. See, it seems like there's two camps with this whole thing. It's like one camp says, do what's required at all costs. Or like, your knee hurts, run anyway. Don't be a pussy, just do the fucking work. Fuck your excuses, right? I call this camp like the doers. Now, I don't know about you, but I have this never-ending drill sergeant for like totally fully embedded into my psyche. So I really don't need more of that in my life from like a coach or anybody outside of me. Like, I'm good internally on that one. I'm really in the process of learning to reel that part of me back in and get back in the driver's seat. And then you have this other camp that's all about going with the flow, right? And listening to your feelings. They're all like, yo, man, just go with the flow. Do what feels right. And so let's call these people the feelers. So you got like the doers and you got the feelers. Now, the problem with this is these are the two extremes. And these two extremes, they come with some big ass side effects. Now, the doers, they usually burn out or their body breaks down. And the feelers are inconsistent. Like, normally they're just riding this roller coaster of results. Great results, no results. Great results, no results. It's like their results are just consistently inconsistent. You know what I mean? So I looked at this whole thing and I was like, well, there has to be a middle ground. And in that middle ground, there has to be like this place where there's real lasting power that can be found. And what I discovered is true self-love is being committed to the being and the doing aspects that are in alignment with the identity that is congruent with that which you desire. So for instance, if you're a coach and maybe you're a course creator, if you want to generate $1 million a year inside your business and you want to have an amazing, freedom-based life, whatever that looks like for you, where you're present with your family and your children and having fun, then we have to take the time to ask ourselves a question, which is, who is the me generating $1 million a year being, and what is the me generating $1 million a year doing? Right? And if you don't know the answer, then look at someone in your industry who has those results and has the marriage and the family dynamics and the lifestyle you desire. Like, who are they being? What are the things that they're doing? And are you willing to decide to be and do those things day in and day out? If the real answer is no, then don't commit to making $1 million a year as a coach and a course creator. If the answer is yes, then commit and then do what's required. And some days there may be a little bit of force that may be required. And what I mean by that is a thought at some point in time is going to try to keep you playing small. Because you currently have an identity. You currently have a way of being and doing things. And that current way of being and doing things, it must die in order to be that which you desire to become. And your ego is going to come up with very sneaky ways to try to keep your current way of being and doing things alive. And if you understand this and have an awareness around this, then you can choose to be and act in a way that is congruent with the things you desire. And this, my friend, is my definition of like true self-love. So how can you improve your level of commitment? Well, there's a few things that you can do. So let's just kind of keep these in mind, right? So one is what gets measured gets improved. So spend a few hours tracking how you spend your time and where you're spending your money. Because I assure you, there is a price to be paid for that which you desire, both in time and money. So look at how much time you're spending working on your business. Look at how much time that you're spending with your wife and your family. Look at how much time you're spending honoring your body on a daily basis, and figure out how much money are you spending on these things. Like, is your time and money being spent on the things that are congruent with the desires that you want to create? If so, then just keep moving forward. And if not, then maybe it's time to fully commit or recommit to your desires. Now, another way to improve your level of commitment is by using the Edison method. Now, I remember reading a book called The Greatest Man Who Ever Lived, Secrets for Unparalleled Success from the Life of Jesus by this author named Stephen K. Scott. And in that book, he called something, like the Edison method, but he called it something else. I don't remember what it was, but for the sake of me explaining the concept, let's just fucking call it the Edison method. Cool? In the book, Stephen K. Scott talked about how Thomas Edison would really journal out the cascading positive consequences of inventing the light bulb. Like, you've probably heard and you probably read or something that it took Thomas Edison 10,000 tries until he cracked the code on inventing the light bulb. Like, that's a lot of failures, right? But what you probably don't know is that for Edison, it wasn't really about inventing the light bulb. That wasn't the thing that kept him going through all of those failures. See, the light bulb was just the bridge to his bigger vision of every home needing electricity and all of the big money that was generated from that. So if you want to increase your levels of commitment so you stick to your goals and your routines, then take the time to map out what happens when you achieve your goal. And just keep mapping out and keep writing out the cascading impacts as far as you can take it. I mean, Edison had pages and pages and pages and pages of his why for sticking to things, because he kept following these positive cascading impacts. It's if this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. And so this gave him leverage to stick through the suck, right? So that way, so when things get hard and resistant kicks you in the face, you can keep going. Now, I tell you this because no matter what your journey is, resistance is real, and it's going to show up and it's going to test you to see if you're truly committed or not. And by the way, the haves, are always truly committed. Now, if you get what I'm telling you today, then you're going to understand the key to sticking to your goals and making your dreams and your vision a reality. And you're going to build this life that's just going to be amazing. People are like, oh, you're so lucky. And they're not going to see all of the late nights, all of the early mornings, all of the adjusting, because you were just fucking committed to your vision. It's really simple. And again, I talked about this last Sunday sermon. Simple to do, simple not to do. Doesn't mean that it's easy. This stuff takes some grit. It takes some tenacity, but this is really the key to sticking to your goals and your routines, right? To stop quitting, be committed. Now, if you don't get this and you keep thinking, well, I'm just going to be in flow all the time, it's going to be good all the time, it's going to be perfect, no resistance. Good luck making that happen. Good luck making your goals a reality. That has not been my experience. And a lot of the people I talk with that have the lives and lifestyles that I really look up to, that has not been their experience either. So my invitation to you this day is this. Where in your life is it time to go all in on the things you want? I'm talking about rain, sleet, snow, or shine. You choose day in and day out to do what's required to make your vision a reality. Not from this place of pure force, but rather from this place of power, where you're making the decision knowing that what you want is done. And it's only a matter of time for you just to simply do the things that are required. So my friend, that's going to do it for this Sunday sermon edition of the Anthony John Amyx podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. If you haven't grabbed my book called Mindset is Not Enough, I really highly recommend it because it really helps you increase your ability to fully, truly, full-on commit to things. And it's also going to help you understand what's keeping you from pulling the trigger and going all in on yourself. So make sure you go to ajamyx.com/book to get it right now. It's absolutely free. Again, just go to ajamyx.com/book to get Mindset is Not Enough right now for absolutely free. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Until next time, my friend, I'm out. Peace.
Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to ajamyx.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.